So when somebody tries to tell me, hey, well, your organization cucked because you're brown, or your organization accepts gays and that's degenerate or whatever, I simply laugh at them, and that's why they hate us. Like the alt-right, like ethno-nationalists aren't like, oh, cool, the Proud Boys, we should join them. They're Puritans, and when they start seeing, oh, well, we accept all these people that, are destroying America or whatever, they'll kind of join something else. I mean, there's so many other groups that, believe that the white race is superior, or, they want to boot out people from different ethnicities. And, it's their right to do so. It's their right to think that way. But our organization just doesn't accept them. It's not a movement. It's a fraternity. It's a men's fraternity. So we have rules on coming in. And one of our tenets is anti-racist, and another one of our tenets is anti-racial guilt. So I'm not going to feel guilty about being a brown, black, white, yellow, green individual. And I'm not going to force those views on anybody else.
Is this a good time that there should be a fight club out there on the streets? Can you explain to me a little bit about the fighting and how that might get you into trouble in instances like if it's just one guy who's out there and hits somebody or kicks somebody?
Well, I rather think that your question's a little pointed there. So first, I'll answer another question that you didn't ask, which are you a fight club? And we're definitely not. As a matter of fact, that's actually one of the questions in my vetting process for the Vice City Proud Boys, which are the South Florida Proud Boys. One of the questions asks you, do you think we're a fight club? If yes, why? And we usually get people that say no. But we do definitely get those people that say yeah. And like some people will answer yeah, I'll be like, oh, because I want to fight for America or whatever. But we're not a fight club. Let's start by the last time somebody called me a white nationalist, was the exact words, was when I touched down in Miami. There was somebody with a Che Guevara shirt. I was at baggage claim, and he had like a red bandana on. And it's weird to see, like Miami is typically a very calm city when it comes to politics. But that was the last time I got called a white nationalist. And, I'm pretty dark. I'm not anywhere near white. And then, and I've never, I lived in North Florida in like Hicksville, and I've never been called like a racist name. And the only time that somebody's ever called me like the N-word has been when I go to these events, and it's always from the other side. They've called me a coon. They've used the N-word a whole bunch of times. Uncle Tom, which is one that I don't understand because Uncle Tom's the hero of that story. It's a normal thing. I get death threats all the time. Somebody said that they were going to put a bullet through my skull, and there was going to be mass casualties at my event. But yeah, it's a normal thing. I feel like it's like the pre-Jim Crow era at the moment, where I'm exaggerating, obviously. It's not, people are being prejudiced against me, not because of my skin color, right? Because I feel like we've gotten to a way better place than we did pre-civil rights era, but it's because of my views, my political views, which if they were extreme, I could kind of tell you, I have my ear to the ground. Like the most extreme view that I hold is probably my views on the Second Amendment. I feel like gun laws are unconstitutional.
And Enrique Tarrio, as well as destruction of property, has been charged with possession of firearms magazines in Washington, D.C. This has some people abuzz on the internet, wondering if Tarrio has been deliberate in his actions so that he will be positioned to publicly challenge Washington, D.C.'s gun laws. I will read his statement he made regarding the former charge. At the time of his arrest, Tarrio was on the phone with a USA Today reporter. Just a half hour before his arrest, I had texted Terrio a series of questions to update this interview. His answer to a question about inaccuracies in the press regarding the D.C. conflict was cryptic. He wrote publicreport.org, quote, "You say that as if that hasn't always been the case. Plus, I have this thought out a lot more than just dress in black. I've always planned to the end." Unquote. Tarrio had made statements that the Proud Boys might take up the black bloc look of Antifa-aligned groups in Washington, D.C. on January the 6th. Before I get to part 1 of the Unblocked podcast conversation with Tarrio, which was recorded before the new year, I am going to start by elaborating on a comment that was not explained fully in the last segment, episode 4 of Unblocked podcast. That's when Proud Boys chapter leader Thad from Utah debated and agreed on several points of common ground with Black Lives Matter leader Jakari Kelly. They formed a friendship last summer and held a presser in late September denouncing white supremacy. It was a positive conversation. Now, in that talk, Thad described December 12th in Washington, D.C. as a, quote, logistical error. I didn't press because it was the beginning of a long New Year's Eve live stream. We still had a lot of conversation ahead, but I took that as a euphemism for two specific events on December 12th that put the Proud Boys in headlines everywhere and resulted in an unapologetic stance from their chairman Enrique Tarrio that would lead to consequences as soon as he stepped back in D.C. on January 4th ahead of the MAGA demonstrations planned for the 6th. Now, looking back to December 12th, first, there's a video of an Antifa group being unilaterally attacked by Proud Boys. It was shot by videographer Villain, who I have since spoken to. And in the video, he says he was torn. He's against the black bloc tactics in Antifa, and he didn't like to see violence in an attack like that. Nevertheless, Villain is symmetrically opposite me. I am center-left. He is somebody who identifies center-right. And I am speaking to him and other live streamer and videographers in the next episodes of Unblocked podcast. Now, I also witnessed a Proud Boys group harass the fluorescent-capped legal aid workers of the group National Lawyers Guild, also on December 12th. One conservative commentator for Newsmax even told me that evening, quote, "This feels like retaliation." For November the 14th, when several daylight attacks took place against MAGA normies, crossing BLM Plaza after the Million MAGA March had ended a mile away at Freedom Plaza. In all these cases, these were non-Proud Boys being assaulted in November by those supporting BLM and Black Bloc leftist groups in D.C., with which I have marched undercover. You can see that at publicreport.org. I have also posted video of all these incidents I'm mentioning on our new Facebook page, facebook.com/unblockedpod. Please subscribe. Unblocked Podcast is also on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Now, the second issue from the 12th of December. What would get Enrique Tarrio arrested was the burning of a Black Lives Matter sign. It appeared to be one of at least 3 signs that were taken down by the Proud Boys. One I saw personally snatched from a church near the Capitol Hilton as a rally mob marched on BLM Plaza in the 10 p.m. hour in December, following several of their members being stabbed in a confrontation. This was one of many confrontations led by both sides that day across the city. So, Enrique Tarrio has now been arrested in D.C. as of Monday, January 4th, reportedly for participating in that sign burning. Tarrio told me just an hour before his arrest that besides the Proud Boys getting hurt, Tarrio did not see others on the right wing being attacked December the 12th, quote, "which is better than what happened in November, so I'll take that as a win," unquote. I myself did see the Black Bloc move on the residents of the Hyatt Place Hotel and the Capitol Hilton, where patrons stood outside and were confronted. I break that down also on publicreport.org. So, Enrique Tarrio, who we should say, for those who do not know, is black. He has been arrested. He confessed with a photo of himself burning the BLM sign and saying on Parler, quote, "The FBI is currently investigating a supposed, quote, hate crime perpetrated by the Proud Boys. They're even offering a reward. I'm here to tell you that there was no hate crime committed. The only hate there is in my heart is for communism and an authoritarian government. BLM is a Marxist movement. It isn't about the color of someone's skin. Against the wishes of my attorney, I am here today to admit that I am the person responsible for the burning of this sign, and I am not ashamed of what I did because I didn't do it out of hate. I did it out of love. Love for a country that has given my family so much. The burning of this banner wasn't about race, religion, or political ideology. It was about a racist movement that has terrorized the citizens of this country. I will not stand by and watch them burn another city. So let me make this simple. I did it. Come get me if you feel like what I did was wrong. We'll let the public decide. Forever proud, Enrique. Tarrio's statement is consistent with what he tells me in the interview back in September. You will hear that he thinks BLM has been co-opted by Marxists. There's been a fog of a propaganda war. This much is obvious. And the media has fallen for it. I will let you decide what to make of Tarrio in his own words. And I say as much in my intro when I was still too nervous to release this content due to intimidation from leftist groups that I've been going back and forth with since September. I would encourage even them to listen.
Perfect example with the Che Guevara stuff. So as a Cuban, probably the most offensive thing that you can say to a Cuban or show a Cuban is Che Guevara, right? Especially, and then more than anybody, it would be me, because my family owned land in Cuba during the revolution, and Castro's rebel army moved in and wanted to use my family's farm as a forward operating base to take over the city. And when my family refused, they put two of them on their knees, tied their hands behind their back, and shot them in the back of the head. That was a command given directly from Che Guevara and Fidel Castro. But I've never, even if they wear that shirt, I saw the shirt this morning, and I never thought, to tell the person anything. Did it make my blood boil? Yeah, it did. But, that's his freedom of speech. And no matter how I feel, I'm not going to start a problem with somebody over their views.
Now, when did this start for you as far as, was this when you became the chairman of the Proud Boys, or was this something that happened before that as far as the threat?
I think it just has to do when I became a Proud Boy. I've always, since day one that I joined, I've always been active.
How long ago was that?
I've been active before the Proud Boys. I've actually been an activist for 18 years, right before the 2004 election. I started getting interested and getting out there, and then I went full force at about 2006. And
you're saying as a conservative activist?
Yes, I've always been a conservative. I was born and raised as a conservative. There's nothing in me that leans left. Right. Do I have some views that would be considered left-wing views by the mainstream media? Yes. I feel like we have to abolish prisons for profit. I feel like the drug war has failed. Usually people attribute them to as in left-wing views, but.
Well, what I've found is that as I've been traveling the country, that people's views don't fit into an exact cookie cutter of right and left so much.
They definitely could communicate with PD, but I don't know if it works with what their message is. I mean, they had a sign that said death to cops or whatever, and all cops are bastards, or one of their sayings. So I kind of don't think that they want to work with cops. I mean, for us, I'm not going to say I'm a thin blue line guy. I've actually never flown the thin blue line. I see them as people, and I see them as people that are under attack. But I want to be objective about things. I don't care what Antifa decides to say or what the media decides to say about us. That's none of my concern. It's not my thing. They've already picked, I guess, the boogeyman. I'm their boogeyman. The Proud Boys are their boogeyman. So that's just not even in my realm of thought on this. To me, is if you're coordinating like a protest or something, you coordinate with the police officers. That's like pre-2016. If you were having an event, you call the cops and you tell them, hey, I'm going to have this event here. You know, is it okay? It doesn't mean that if they say no, it's not okay, that I don't go do it anyways, because you really don't need a permit to protest. That would be a violation of the First Amendment. So the underlying cause that they're like what they're showing that they're protesting for is I guess a good cause. You know, they're protesting police brutality, right? But if you've been on the ground, and correct me if I'm wrong, although they do say that, I think they just enjoy the anarchy. I think they enjoy shutting shit down. I think they enjoy breaking stuff. You know, they're young kids. They're victims. At the end of the day, they're victims. I do see them as victims. They're victims to a system that's failed them. They're victims to a system, to a media that's told them to hate police officers and people with different views. That includes Trump supporters. They've done that. And then the second part of the question is the militarized police. I'm going to put myself in their shoes, and I'm like, okay, well, there's a problem with police brutality, and there's a problem with the militarization of police. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to shut shit down and I'm going to burn stuff, right? That's I guess that's the fork in the road. You know, that's a solution, you know? And by shutting shit down and burning stuff and destroying businesses and murdering people on the street, you're actually training these people and being better at quelling your protest. You're actually getting more funds diverted in order to get more gear. Now, let's put ourselves in the shoes of a police officer for a second, right? You're not getting paid well, so typically these people, you know, kind of join to do something good. You know, they feel like they're doing something good in the world. And then your city's getting overrun, and your buddy gets hit by a Molotov cocktail from a riot, and another one of your buddies gets injured, and then your shift is over. And all of you are sitting in the locker room, and you're talking about, you know, the events today and how fucked up it is that, you know, I don't know, John caught on fire because he got hit by a Molotov cocktail. And you establish a team. You know, you form a bond of brotherhood because these people are genuinely trying to kill you. It's an act of self-preservation. And I don't blame them for it, to be honest with you. You know, you think police officers are sitting there and there's chance of, what do we want? Dead cops. When do we want them? Now. And you're just sitting there and you think that you're going to stay objective about things? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. They're out to kill you. We forget that police officers are fucking human.
This is the new Unblocked podcast. Now, you're listening to a conversation with Proud Boys Chairman Enrique Tarrio, a conservative black man whose family lineage is Afro-Cuban. He's from Florida. I first spoke with Tarrio following the September 26th Proud Boys rally in Portland. This was a tense time in which getting the Antifa side and Proud Boys side to not violently clash in the streets was a theme in my previous podcast series. I'd created an account on Parler just to try to reach Tarrio and see through the fog of a propaganda war brewing. After all, not a month earlier, there had been 2 casualties. Antifa supporter Michael Reinhold shot and killed Patriot Prayer supporter Jay Danielson on the streets of Portland. Then federal officers shot and killed Michael Reinhold. I'm on the lefty side of the political spectrum, yet I've been incorrectly portrayed as, quote, alt-right by 3 radical insurrectionist anarchist websites just for reaching out to have the conversation that you are about to hear with Tarrio. It was recorded on Monday, September 28th, a night before the debate in which President-elect Joe Biden would name-check the Proud Boys and President Trump would tell them to stand by. This is my first time speaking extensively to Tarrio. I let the subject speak at length. There is plenty I will still challenge Tarrio on. Well, for example, Following the street attacks in Washington, D.C., November the 14th, a message appeared on the Proud Boys Telegram channel calling for the, quote, Day of the Rope, a clearly racist citation. At the very Portland rally I attended in September, an associate of the Proud Boys, who Tarrio says was not a member, kicked a young journalist in the head. Some of this interview is cut when Tarrio explains frat minutiae, such as that the Proud Boys used to wear Hawaiian shirts when they did a drinking night called Margarita Boys, where they would dress like dads who drink margaritas, but that was ruined, he said, when the Boogaloo started wearing the Hawaiian shirts. I chose not to get into all that, nor the group's expansion internationally. The question that the media kept asking has been, are the Proud Boys platform white supremacists? Tarrio, a black man, explains how the right is constantly portrayed that way, even though he says they are not. This is how I put it.
So you have one side thinking everybody is a communist on the other side, and you have one side thinking everybody's a Nazi on the other side, and everybody's mostly wrong.
Well, yes, I do agree with that. I don't want to be the guy to say, well, that's different with us, but I am going to say it is different with us. I've never seen like a video of somebody going on like the Antifa side and the Antifa side. You see it with the BLM movement, and I'll tell you a story that I have, a personal story with the BLM movement that I have that was different. But on the Antifa side, you ask them if they're communists, and they say yeah. And you ask them to denounce communism, and they say no. You ask them, are there good cops? And they'll say no. Maybe there's
Right.
one in there, but I've never seen it. I've never witnessed it. But when you come to my side, like we call them communists, right? That's the key word to calling them. I call them communists because they are. They've accepted that label. But you come to me and you're like, well, are you a Nazi? And I'm like, no. Are you a fascist? No. Can you disavow fascism and Nazism, I guess? And I could say, yeah. Like I don't even have to think about it. It just comes out of me. I was born in a right-wing conservative household, an anti-authoritarian household, and I know that they're the same shit. But you don't see that on their side. I don't see it. Can you go to a right-wing rally and let's say you go to like a MAGA crowd, right? Like you're outside of a Trump rally and you ask them to denounce racism or denounce Nazism or fascism, and they'll say, yeah.
I noticed that. I went to Tulsa, it was the president's first rally, and at that time I hadn't figured out this story yet. I hadn't figured out that there was such a huge anarchist, anti-fascist bloc that had been doing so much of the escalation and catalyzation of the destruction. So when I got to Tulsa, I actually was doing the same kind of recon reporting that I do in the Black Bloc in Tulsa, and I was following a couple of Proud Boys. Very early on, there was stuff that I had read that wasn't matching what I was seeing on the ground. First, Boogaloo guy, he was a Second Amendment guy, was wearing a Hawaiian shirt, and he was black. But another guy, young kid in Tulsa, he took his Hawaiian shirt off because he was tired of people mistaking him for being racist. But one thing that I did witness was one, a Proud Boy that was coming with mace to the front line to confront the protesters. Now,
Yeah.
I just ask, in situations like this, when guys show up to fight and think that they're supposed to, or that that's an all right way to get into it, is it such a good idea?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have another thing that I think that people think is that like our organization's like a hive mind of like political ideology, that we think all the same, and we don't. We definitely don't. As a matter of fact, we're not a political organization. And I'd say just off the top of my head, 60% or 70% of our members just don't go to rallies. They don't attend. They're not activists. You know, they're people that just want to get out of the house once a month. But do we, like, I have a Bernie bro in my chapter. Big Bernie supporter. In Boston, we have this guy that's super duper anti-Trump. I'm talking about super anti-Trump. He's not pro-Biden. He wasn't pro-Bernie, but he was super anti-Trump. Like, he's definitely not voting for Trump. And so when you say, well, you know, you didn't know where to go, and that's part of our organization. That's kind of how we're structured, I guess. It is the chapters are autonomous, and the word chairman is really important because it's not president. Like, I don't hold executive power over chapters. Like, I can't really tell them what to do. I kind of just mediate situations between chapters, like a Supreme Court justice. And we're tasked with me and the council per se is tasked with creating new chapters, right? New chapter requests. Another word that you use that's confusing as shit, to me at least, is the boogaloo thing. I don't necessarily know what the fuck it is. It kind of kicked off into this Hawaiian shirt thing, and it kind of kicked off as like a anti-gun grabbing thing. So then it morphed into like this meme with the ATF guy. I don't know if you've ever seen it. He has like the blue ATF hat, and he's like peeking over like the fence in your lawn to see what kind of illegal weapons you have or whatever. Sure. And then it turned into this anti-government thing. And it was a right-wing thing for quite a bit. Because it's not a new meme either. It's an old meme. The confusing, like at that point I wasn't confused. I'm like, oh, this is a right-wing thing. Like, but then when anarchists started co-opting it for themselves was when I was really confused. Like, my guys showed up to, and this was recently, this was like, I think it was Michigan, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong. But like my guys showed up, and the Boogaloo guys were calling my guys Nazis. And like my guys were like, wait, what? And they actually got in a fight with this guy because he pulled a gun on one of my guys. So another one of my guys came from the side and like grabbed his arm, and then state police came in and arrested this dude for pointing a gun at somebody. And then there was a case with the Boogaloo thing just recently where they were like talking or something like that. They got like terrorism charges or something.
Yeah,
but it wasn't like they were like speaking with like a foreign entity, but like a foreign like left wing or Muslim
Hamas
entity.
It was
Hamas.
Yeah, it was Hamas.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, you know, you attribute like the mainstream will attribute like anti-Islamic views to the right wing, right? So like who in their right mind would be like a right wing extremist and fucking contact Hamas? So that's a very confusing term, and I think pop culture has just said, okay, well, these Boogaloo boys are bad, no matter what side. That includes like regular Trump supporters. You know, they're like, oh, these guys are bad. These guys are horrible. So that's confusing as shit to me. We kind of got pissed because the Margarita Boy thing, it kind of got fucked up with that, even though we still do it. Like we were in Vegas just like 4 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. We had our Marg Boy night. And then we have like a spin-off called Daiquiri Boys, and they're supposed to fight with each other or whatever. But it's all based on comedy and fucking just shit posting. But it's just confusing to me on that. But yes, our guys, and then to go full circle on what you said, our guys are very protective too. So now I'm going to hit the individual that you said that went to the front line with the pepper spray. Our guys are very protective, right? Bravery and stupidity are the same thing. Like, I'll tell you, it's probably like brave and stupid to go into Portland, you know, to host an event in Portland. So like they have a protective like thing where there's a front line. We've seen it before where they fucking throw bags of feces and bottles of urine or fireworks, modified fireworks. I've been hit with a modified firework where I had shrapnel in my arm and leg. I have video of that. And you know, they are gonna go right there on the lineup. It's just natural instinct for them to do that. We try not to start fights, but if something were to start at that front line, I guarantee you that one of my guys will be at that line. I have a very interesting story that happened to me about, I don't know, 2 months ago, 3 months ago. It was whenever the president's birthday was. So Miami had like this flotilla, this Trump flotilla, right, that was going for the president's birthday. The day before, they had desecrated the Christopher Columbus statue in Miami. They like spray painted his hands red. They put the hammer and sickle on it. They put the all cops are bastards, the fuck 12, all that shit. So whatever, I get there pretty early. I usually like arriving pretty early, which isn't the smartest idea sometimes, specifically at this event. So it was the event, the flotilla was passing by just like a quarter block from where the statue was. And I didn't even know that the statue was there. So I heard somebody talking about the statue, and I'm like, oh, I want to go see it. So I went over there, and it's me and another one of my guys. And I'm wearing like political stuff. And I had just run out of cigarettes. And I'm like, fuck, I need to go get cigarettes. So I turn the corner, and there's this giant fucking marching fucking group that's coming in. And I see that they have like spray cans and hammers and shit in their hands. Oh. And this is where the bravery sometimes is a stupid thing. And I'm like, fuck this. And it was just me and the other guy. I'm like, fuck this. You're not touching this goddamn statue. So I instantly turn back. I turn around and I stand in front of the statue, and they fucking come in front of the statue. And they're like, there's an organizer. It's a white dude, right? And there's another one that's pretty loud. And I go, if you guys touch the statue, I'm going to break your fucking mouth, right? So they backed off. This giant group could have fucking just grabbed me and just like fucking ragdolled me the entire time. But they decided to be peaceful, and they decided to sit 6 feet apart from each other and kneel and do like the 7-minute thing where they're in silence for 7 minutes. And whatever, they got up and they left. So I went to go get cigarettes. I got a pack of cigarettes, and I came back, and I noticed that they're marching towards a big Trump crowd. So most of that whole crowd, like, just buzzed the Trump supporters, but there were some. Actually, most of them stayed, but another portion just kept going. They didn't want any problems, right? They just, I guess, wanted to say their message and leave. So whatever, I'm there, whatever. There's people like screaming at each other. There's people talking to each other, whatever. And again, my guys fucking stand right in between like two people that are fighting. And things cooled down. And it was towards the end of the day, and this black older gentleman comes up to me and he goes, why don't you support, why are you against us marching for police brutality? And I said the same thing I told you today. And I said, well, who told you? Who was the one that told you that I'm for police brutality? He goes, well, why did you stand there, against us? And I'm like, I wasn't standing there against police brutality. I was standing there so you guys won't fuck up a fucking history or whatever. And he understood. And he goes, but why don't you, so you don't support BLM? And I go, I support the cause. I don't support the movement or the organization, And he goes, why? And I go, because I think your movement's been co-opted by Marxists. And he goes, that's not true. blah, blah, blah. And then we got into the conversation of rioting, and he's completely against rioting and burning businesses down, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, I support you then. Like, I'm in full support of what you're doing, you know? And he goes, yeah, but Marxists haven't, you can't say that Marxists take over this thing. And I'm like, okay. And to my peripheral, I knew that this woman, which was one of the ones that stood and was giving these marching orders, she was there arguing with people. She was just starting shit with people. And I go, why don't you just don't say anything and come with me? So I walked up to her, and she had this shirt that said, "Make America Brown Again." And I go, what do you think about Karl Marx? And he's like, oh, you know, he is, you know, the beginning of equality, and, you know, he's a great man. And I could see, like, the guy's face kind of, like, contort. And I'm like, did you guys come to spray paint the monument? And he goes, you know, maybe we were. You know, that's not up to you, but that shows me that you put property before people. And they go, how about these businesses that are burned down, and the cop car that was burned down just the other day? Oh, that's great. They deserve it. You know, that's a capitalist system that failed. When she said that, this guy fucking jumped down her throat. He was like, fuck you, get out of here. You're not here for George Floyd. You're not here. You know, he went off on her so hard that she left.
Now,
And,
this was in Florida.
This was in Miami, yeah. You know, he shook my hand after. He's like, that doesn't mean that they co-opted my our movement. And I'm like, well, they're the loudest ones that you guys have. And until you don't fucking go ahead and at least, I know it's hard, and I told him, I know it's hard that you guys host an event and you can't stop people from coming, just like that guy that kicked the journalist, you know, at our event.
At your event,
but
yeah.
you can disavow it, and you could unwelcome it, you know. And I just don't see like there's this grand concerted effort to do that. When I was in Portland, here's another thing that nobody knows. When I was in Portland, this was Saturday night while we're having our party, I left the party with the guys to meet one of the leaders of the BLM organization from Utah, from Salt Lake. And we had a sit-down conversation, and I'm like, what is it that we can work on together? Because I've been on the legislative side of things for a very long time. What is it that we can work together? And I'm like, well, one of our tenets is, you know, ending the drug war, you know? And I'm like, I'll fucking walk in with you if we could agree on this, and we could say, hey, we're not going to agree on anything else, and we state that publicly, because she didn't want to publicly be like pro Proud Boy, but she wanted to. Right. I'm anti Proud Boy, but we agree on this. I mean, on a legislative level, I told her I'll fly to Salt Lake City, right, which coincidentally is the capital of Utah, where she lives. And we'll walk into the state capitol, and we'll walk into a legislative office as BLM and as Proud Boys, and we'll say we want to get this, put something down on paper, obviously. We want to get this done. We want to end the drug war. We want to fucking, you know. And a legislator, that's like a hanging carrot for an activist legislator, right? Not just like your regular establishment type, but that's a hanging carrot. The legislator that brought both of them together, you know, and that's something that has a very high chance of getting proposed and getting passed. So we sat down. It doesn't mean that I don't sit down with the other side, because there is a lot of like cross things. We focus on so much on the things we disagree on that we fucking forget that we agree on so many other things, like getting corporations out of politics. Yeah. That we can work together and we can do that. But I'm not going to do that if with a group that's not going to go ahead and denounce. Like, there has to be a benefit for me. You get me? I'm not going to extend an olive branch if you're going to allow, like, I'm so anti these riots that I fly to Portland, to the opposite side of the country, to host an event. So the least that you can do for me is denounce these fucking anarchists that are in your movement, that are co-opting your movement. So that would be like something that I need from her. And obviously she would need something from me. And that's fine. And I think that that's bridging the gap where I'm against police brutality, but I'm super against communist and socialist ideals. And I think that if that's something that we're willing to negotiate on, I'll take that flight to Salt Lake and I'll get it done.
It's a real disconnect because the people who have the most influence, whether it be mainstream media or some of these social activist groups, they're on a completely different cultural divide. So my question to you is, are you just inflaming? Do you just keep inflaming that, or is there any way to break through?
I think to break through is to have these conversations like with you, and give a further understanding of what our concerns are. And it doesn't make other people's concerns less important, but if we can come together and if I was able to fucking put my pride to the side, right, and sit down with the leadership of BLM and be like, hey, can we do this? Even if we disagree on things, because there's a lot of things that we agree on, then anybody can do it. Period. Anybody can do it. You could get it done. No matter, I'll probably get hate for saying that I even sat down with somebody, and I'm cool with that. That's fine. I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of people hate me right now for fucking going into Portland on Saturday, but I'm okay with it because at the end of the day, this is what I believe in, and this is what I'm going to stand for, and nobody's going to take that from me. Everything that I had to lose that I thought was important was taken from me about 2 years ago. But I'm happier now than I ever have been in my life because I feel like I'm doing something. I feel like I'm doing something I love. So there is they can't deplatform me anymore. It just doesn't exist. There's nothing that they boot me off of that I can't find an alternative or build an alternative to. So to those people that think that hate me, well, I'm sorry to hear that. But I'm living a pretty good life right now. I'm traveling. I think I'm making positive changes in the world. I love my boys. I'm always going to defend them no matter what. And I'm part of the greatest organization that the world's ever known. And I won't apologize for that.
Now, when you say they, like a couple of years ago, that they come deplatform you or come after you with what, your profession, your work, or?
Yes. So my trade, actually.
Uh-huh.
I was there's only 2 companies in the United States that did what I did, and I was a smaller one. And I used to be a DoD contractor. I did security assessments for military bases.
Oh.
And because of the doxing and all that shit, my DoD contracts got closed down. I was kicked out of my bank because of my political views. And that's not me exaggerating. Project Veritas, actually, I worked with them, and we actually got somebody in the Chase branch to pretty much admit, and his exact words, is we don't do business with those kinds of people. I've been kicked off of PayPal, over 60-something, I've lost count, 60-something credit card processors for my online store.
Oh, yeah?
GoDaddy tried to steal my URL just 3 weeks ago, which I've never seen them do to anybody. I had to hire a lawyer and force their hand. But I've been kicked off. I got kicked out of Airbnb, and I never even used the thing. Like, I just signed up for it. And I got kicked off of Airbnb. I used to use it to, like, just browse. And I got kicked out of it for being part of a hate group.
There are so many sort of similarities, and probably what divides, it's a small amount of people who are doing things that create the loudest voice.
The 3 documentary crews that followed me around from the moment that I landed on Portland to the moment I left, every single one of them, we became friends with them. Every single one of them were like, I expected this to be a completely different thing than what it is. And I think that that's what's missing. I think the missing portion is let somebody be heard, right? And understand where they're coming from. Understand our concerns, because I understand their concerns. Maybe I'm going about it the wrong way, but maybe they're going about it the wrong way. But we can't have that conversation if the media, let's be honest, the media, like major organizations, what sells is, like you said, the riot porn. You know, it gets clicks. It gets, wow, look at this. Oh my God, I've never seen this before. And you know why it's so? They're a corporation that's meant to make money, but on the other side, their viewer, you know, they're going to work, they're talking to their neighbor, they're at the fucking grocery store, and they don't see this because there isn't this big divide that the media is portraying. You know, that's why people are clicking. It's because they don't see it. People are like, oh my God, what's happening in Portland? Yeah, what's happening in Portland? But fucking go a couple miles outside of Portland to the suburbs. It's not affecting them. I mean, economically, eventually it will, but if it keeps going on. But people in Miami, like, they don't see none of that shit. So there's not this huge divide. I think that America isn't as divided as everybody's making it out to seem.
You were asked that a lot, I noticed. You were asked that a lot about Civil War and stuff. That people keep asking about that, like, and I keep telling them, no, look, it's just a small amount of people that are doing the disruption. Yeah.
If you go back in fucking time and you go to like the 70s, the anti-war fucking riots and during the civil rights fucking era, like those were riots. You know, those were riots, and we got through that. And I think we're going to get through it again. I think they're going to cry on November 3rd, 4th. I think they're going to cry pretty hard. But I think, you know, after some time, and hopefully we got a big, I think we need the president. I think the president is the best fit for the job right now. And I hope we get somebody that's a good negotiator in 2024.
I as well am looking for solutions in 2024, and I hold on to the hope that we can break the two-party system. If the working class were able to see where the common interests lie, rather than being concerned if they are on the winning side, we may be able to enact change even still. But the propaganda is real. And now the pendulum has swung, and the other side of the political spectrum is taking to the streets to voice their disenfranchisement. I spotted Terrio in November in Atlanta. He brazenly crossed over from the MAGA crowd to the Atlanta Antifa crowd. There is video on my Jeremy Lee Quinn Twitter account that you can watch of this. And since Terrio is black, Georgia State Police didn't realize the chairman of the Proud Boys had just crossed over to bait the other side. He was polite, but arrogant. He was alone. He was very aware of the kind of reaction he would get. But I think he must have known he couldn't pull that in Portland or D.C. In Atlanta, both sides had guns. Lots of guns. So there was incentive to keep things civil. The woman on point for Antifa in Atlanta was a black woman in a flak jacket who conversed openly and coordinated with the police. She actually had Terrio ejected, with the police escorting him back to the MAGA side. You would never see that in the Pacific Northwest or D.C., where it's not just abolish the police, it's dehumanize the police. So there is vast regional differentiation with all of this. And there is chatter D.C. will flare up again. with planned actions between the Antifa side and Proud Boys side. In Part 3, we will explore what happens if these two sides start talking to each other. More on the new Unblocked podcast. Who started it in D.C.? Well, thank you for listening to Unblocked podcast. We will address that in the next episode. I've requested comment from both BLM DC and several leftist groups that launch the Black Bloc attacks under the mantra, plan your point of entry, plan your point of action, plan your point of exit. That was from the They Them Collective. I have at least another hour of conversation with Terrio. I will give you a hint. Look up Deplorable. It was a MAGA event organized by a gay conservative named Scott, who I saw organizing events in Atlanta. Patrons were attacked by the Black Bloc and activists on January the 19th, 2017. Bottles were thrown at them. You can see the video on my Twitter, @JLeeQuinn. There was at least one assault, and the Proud Boys were on security detail a month later via the original founder of the group, who debuted them the next month in February of 2017. So there's a lot that we all don't know, or at least is not being reported. A lot more to learn. Subscribe, leave a comment on YouTube, ask a question. There's lots more to talk about, including unpacking January the 6th and Inauguration Week this year, now that the tables have turned. Unblocked Podcast.